I wanted to follow up on what Mr. Oaks was saying because I wasn't really exactly clear. I wanted to know what the total debt is that the state of New York owes when you include the public authorities.
Right now, is that the 57? Yeah, 57,609 million is the number, and that was for 13-14. That's the number will be when we do everything this year.
Now, that's just on behalf of the state, though, right? Yeah. Because if you include, I mean, I'm sure you saw the report that the comptroller had issued earlier this month that said the state actually, if you include the public authorities, owes about $243 billion.
Yes, but that's the number we were talking about before. Yeah. Yes. We have heard the numbers, and once again, yes, it is not our responsibility. That has everything in it that has our name on it, even though it doesn't have our responsibility.
So, are you saying that the public authorities, the debt that's issued by public authorities, is not the responsibility of the state of New York to pay back?
No. It is not our debt, even though it is there. It is not our. If they go down, they go down. We don't. We don't have the responsibility to do it.
So how come this legislation that we're voting on today pays for the debt of the Urban Development Corporation, the Housing Finance Agency, the Dormitory Authority, the Thruway Authority? If we don't, we're not responsible for that debt. Why are we?
Well, you're mixing up the two. There are things that we don't do, and I use Columbia or NYU. Those we don't pay for, but there are things that we have them do for us, and the dormitory authority does something for us, that we're responsible. So there are things that we're responsible for, and the responsible items are here in the $57 billion. But of the other things to get to the $200 million, that all the other items that are in there, not all of them are ours. So we'd have to go at piece by piece to say which is ours and which is not.
Okay. So the state, in the end, though, would be responsible should these authorities not pay back this money, the state and the taxpayers.
If it's authority items that they're doing for us, the answer is yes. If it's not for us, no. Meaning it's a state issue, something for the state.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I just also wanted to point out, well, I guess ask another question. 94% of all state-funded debt that's outstanding was issued by the public authorities without the voter approval. Do you see any type of need to maybe change that so that way we're living more within our means and that we do get the voter approval before we do issue this debt, being that the taxpayer is responsible in the end?
Well, there were two things in that question. One, you mentioned living above our means. When we put the roadway in the street in front of your house, that's something that should be in the means. And so we have a lot of things like that we buy and pay for. So there are a lot of things we do that are important, and we're responsible for it. So what's the second part of the question?
Well, I mean, should we have voter approval when, I mean,
voter approval, we do have monies that we do voter approval, but we're allowed to do this, and sometimes we are able to do it faster, doing it this way because of things we need to get done.
I think, am I correct in saying in 3.6 billion out of the 57 billion that we're talking about here was actually approved by the voters?
Yeah, that's the right number. Yes.
That's a very small, what is that? It's about 6%.
Yeah.
Or so. I mean, I think. All right. So I guess that's a discussion for a policy issue further this session. Do we have a long-term plan on how to, I'm looking at some of these numbers here, and it seems that as of this year, we're estimated, what do I do with that page? Here it is. The debt for this year is a total of $56.6 billion, and then next year it's going to be actually, despite making these debt service payments, it's actually going to increase another $988 million to about $57.6 billion. So despite making these debt service payments, our debt is going to still continue to increase. Is there a long-term plan? Have we begun looking at some type of long-term plan to how to start paying down this debt? So even, every year we're not having the same conversation that we're paying our bills, yet the debt keeps rising?
The answer is yes and no. Yes, we have 5-year plans. The MTA has 5-year plans. The building of bridges have 5-year plans. So if you can go through and see the things that they plan to do and how they're planning to do it. But at the same time, we have to get these things done, because if we don't get these things done, we would have problems, and you would be complaining because that the bridge isn't working right, the highway is all pitted with holes. You want to make sure your children are going to a college where the buildings are in good shape. There are a lot of things we do, so I don't consider it wasting money or having to get rid of it. And right now we're in a very good place. As interest is so cheap at this moment that I'm surprised we didn't do more than we're doing now.
Well,
because the cost of money is very, very cheap.
I got to tell you, though, that I think that, how can we say we're in a good place when we have the second largest debt load in the nation? I mean,
because the degree of, that's a nice sentence, but it means nothing.
Well,
the question is are your roads good? Are your bridges good? Are your schools good?
Well,
Those are the complaints. If you said to me, look at the holes in the highway, look at the schools that are falling down, and you're spending all this money, then I would say you have an argument. But we're doing things for what people want, what your people and everybody wants something.
Well, I understand your point, and we may disagree and agree on certain projects. Like for one, I voted against increasing the debt limit last year for the MTA because I didn't believe that spending, I'm sorry to my friends in Long Island, but I didn't believe that spending $9 billion on the Long Island East Side Access Project was the best use of our money, considering that we have a $40 billion deficit in the MTA. And so we may disagree on what projects are good, which is why I go back to the fact that we should have voter approval. Before we issue this debt, we should get approval from the voters, because in the end, they are the ones paying for the project. So if they believe we should spend $9 billion on an East Side Access tunnel, then fine. But we should at least have their voice in the process, so we're just not spending money that we can't pay back.
No, we can pay back, but don't say we can't pay it back. The bonds will go up. We can pay it back, and we have paid it back, and we have even finished some things here, but we're adding additional.
I understand, but we're not paying it back, because the reality is, despite what we're paying here, this very small debt service, the deficit's going to increase another $1 billion by next year as projected.
Well, we are saying we did put caps in, and we are in the cap. We are staying within the cap region, and we're not going above that.
But I believe we're very close to reaching that debt cap.
Close doesn't count. It's like golf. It's getting there. No, we need to use, as I said before, right now, I think interest, if you go to the bank and they give you 0 and they say they're doing you a favor, they didn't charge you. So, I mean, the same thing is happening. These things that we're doing and building, if you live up in Westchester or you live in Rockland or Westchester, you're very interested in that bridge because it's going to fall down one day if we don't put it up. So the money we're going to spend for that, we'd say we've got to get it done.
In some respects, we may agree on certain projects, and others we may disagree, which is why I go back to why the voters should be involved.
Mr. Goodell is looking at you.
But nonetheless, I'll say that you made an interesting point about saying you've got to go to the bank. You've got to go to the bank, and they want to know how you will pay back your loans. And so I'm just asking the same question. I just want to know how, if we have a long-term plan to pay back our debt.
Well, we have paid back our debt, and we are paying back. You mean eliminate our debt is a different question. We are paying our debt. As I said, I think there's $4 billion being deleted that we're going to stop paying, and we're adding additional monies to it. But we're paying our debt, and we've always paid our debt. New York City debt, New York State debt, New York City debt has always been considered good, AAA, everything else. So I don't think there's any concern that the money, that there won't be any payment on it. It's just a question of what issues and what we do and what you want versus what I want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we are paying back our debt. Unfortunately, even though we're paying back our debt, the debt continues to rise, so yet we're never really actually paying down our debt. But I thank you for your time in answering my questions, and I hope that we'll have a more fiscally responsible path going forward and more of a long-term plan on how we're actually going to pay down this debt. Thank you.
Thank you.